Good morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop, and this will be session 3 of carving this Drake Mallard Kit from Coffee Creek Cork, Luke Costilow's company. And I'm having fun with this. I sent Luke the pattern. We kind of talked about collaborating on a project, and he sent me back this kit with the cutout of the head and the cork body and glass eyes. If you missed the first session, we got the head carved, got the body kind of roughed out. In this session, we'll finish some of the body details and really get it all ready and put together for sealing it up. And then we've got a keel. I need to add weight to the keel, get flotation on the bird. So we'll see how far we get today in this session. I don't want these videos to get too long. But if you're enjoying my channel and getting some value out of it, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button. Many of you have done that, over 6,000. I really appreciate that. It's encouraging to me that the channel continues to grow. When I started doing this, I had no idea. I just had the idea of wanting to give back to the carving community, and this is one way to do that by providing free resources for the carving community and showing you one way that I learned how to carve birds, and hopefully that'll be helpful to you. And I want to encourage more people to carve, because making something with your hands is a little bit of a dying art and craft, and I want a new generation to pick it up and take the baton on. So enough talking. Let's in today's session, I'm going to do a little bit of work on the eyes, because we set the eyes in the last session. Now I need to clean those up, and that'll complete the head, and then add those body details like I talked about. Welcome back. Thanks for following along. By the way, just a reminder, this kit is now available at Coffee Creek Cork, Luke Costilow, and you can buy this kit from Luke and follow along. I'm going to take this from beginning to end, so we're going to carve the kit together and then paint the kit so that we end up with a functional working gunning decoy that you might be able to use this season in your hunting outings. This is Luke's information again, just for your reference. All right, let's get started. All right, the first thing I want to do is a little cleanup work on the eyes. We got them set yesterday, and I like to use an X-Acto knife and side scrape right up against the glass. It shaves off a minute amount of the epoxy and smooths things, and that way I'm not using sandpaper next to that glass eye. You can use sandpaper, you just have to be very careful, because it'll scratch a glass eye very quickly. And I kind of developed this approach over time, just using an X-Acto, kind of like in furniture making, to side scrape. I don't know what the official term is for that process. And then I put thumb over the eye to keep it protected, and use the sandpaper then to blend into the wood so that we end up with a nice smooth transition. We don't want a big hunk of epoxy showing through the paint. I don't want that. So I'll spend some time getting both eyes ready to go, and then we'll move on to the body. Now I want to do a little layout work on side pockets, get those positioned. So I've got my calipers here, and I'm going to get a measurement from the bottom of the decoy to the top of the side pocket, and transfer that onto the cork. Just give myself a little guideline there, both sides. So I know how far that side pocket comes up, and then it dips down up near the shoulder here, or the front of the wing. Just want to get that position marked. And I know the position of the back of the side pocket here, cut from the pattern. So that comes up, back down. Make sure I'm in camera here. This will wrap under a bit. And now I want to position the cape. So let me get a measurement from the front of the decoy to where the cape extends onto the back. I'm going to eyeball that about there. And now I want to get a measurement, trying to keep my arms out of the way of the camera here, from the back of the side pocket up to this furthest point forward. So back of the side pocket, and make myself a little arc there. Same thing over here. And then we'll get a measurement from the center line out, top down view, so I know how wide apart those are. Then the cape is going to come back to this point. Now I want to get a measurement from the center line to the widest part of the scapulars here on the back, up near the front. Same thing that side, and the same thing back here. So I know how far that side pocket comes up towards the center line, both sides. Now I have enough guideline here to kind of connect the dots, and this ties into the rear of the side pocket here. I'm showing all of this layout work in this video because assuming there are some newer carvers out there that haven't watched my other videos, I want to keep this all together in one place so it's easy to follow along. Okay, so that positions the side pockets, both sides, and the cape. And I think I'm going to do that carving first, and then we'll come back and work on what do we want to do here in the back for the primaries that are coming up out of the side pocket. But we'll get those shaped first. All right, I'm going to start carving with this 3/4 inch cylindrical saber-tooth burr. The yellow color is the fine tooth again, and that's all we need for this cork. It buzzes through the cork pretty quickly. If anything, you have to be pretty delicate in your touch so you don't dig too deep too fast. So I'm just using the edge of that burr to follow my guidelines from the top down pattern and from the side pattern, and match those both up. And then we can round the scapulars and we can round the side pocket once we get to the proper depth here. So I've matched both of those lines, top and side. Now I'm just going to carve a little bit of the lower edge of the rear of the side pocket there. I don't want to cut that in too deep, but just show a little indication of the side pocket as it wraps under the belly there. Now I can use the side of my burr and take this material off where the tertials are going to tuck into the side pocket there and round the scapulars. I've mentioned this before, with the rotation that I have on my power carving set here, when I pull it towards me, it's a more aggressive cut. When I push it away from me, it's a softer, a more gentle carve. So I do a lot of pushing away on the cork. Now I'm carving in where the front of the side pocket there meets. Going to carve in a little bit of the cape here and a little bit of a V in the back of the decoy to put some shape to the back so it's just not totally flat across the duck's back. So I want that cape raised up a little bit. And that's about as deep as I want to go on that V on the back. And now I'm just rounding off the cape there as it overlaps the scapular feathers. Now I can go back, round the side pocket, and clean that area up where I carved the top-down profile and the side profile, and they meet. It's a little cleanup work I need to do there. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I want to clean this up a little bit more. And I'll jump ahead a little bit here. Okay, working down that second side pocket, same process to develop that side pocket. We're starting to get a nice rounded shape to the bird. Cleaning up the scapulars there. I'll come back with smaller equipment, but I like this big 3/4 inch burr to really take material off and kind of get the overall bird sculpted, and then I can come back with smaller bits and clean things up a little bit later. Let's jump ahead. Okay, finishing up the side pocket shapes. And now I want to work on this tail area in the primaries and that tail curl feather area. So we'll get some different equipment, do a little bit of layout work here, and then come back. All right, I want to stop and do a few dimensional checks, just do some reference checks, see if I'm close to my pattern on both sides. The top of the side pocket again here. Let's see how I'm coming out. All right, that looks good. That looks good. So now we can work on some layout on what I want to do back here. All right, I want to locate where the tertials meet the side pocket here. Roughly that far off the bottom of the decoy. right in there. And then I'm going to get a dimension from the tip of the tail to the tip of the longest tertial here. It's roughly in that position. I'm just going to rough sketch where those big tertials drop. Kind of line up with this. Same over here. I don't think I'm going to pull any speculum out on this particular bird. It's like I've got one tertial wider than the other, so I'll make that correction. Then my primaries, I want to leave a little bit of the tail curl behind, like I have on my pattern. And then the primaries tuck right into these tertials. And then they're going to come together up here. And we'll handle that in the paint. About like that. So I'm going to do some grinding to define those feather groups. And then maybe we can narrow this down and show a little bit of the tail curl from the side. Just a quick note, if you're planning on entering your bird in a competition, you have to be careful and follow whatever the rules are for that particular show. So I may be doing more detail than is allowed. This is not going into a competition. This bird is being made for a friend, and to be hunted over. So I'm not too worried about the rules. But I just want to make that point clear. If you are carving for a competition, just get on that competition's website, pull up the rules, read them, follow them, and you won't have any trouble. Okay, I'm going to use this 1/4-inch cylindrical burr, and I use this burr a lot for general shaping, and I'm going to start and define the underside of the primary flight feather group here as it tucks, and then the rear edge of the tertial group. And that's about all the carving detail I'm going to put into the wing area and the tertials. Put a little bit of a separation here between the primaries. And I'm using the end of the burr like an end mill there to remove a little bit of material there. You can see a little bit of shadow. Now the side of the burr, I'm taking the primary group down just maybe 1/8 of an inch, so not very far, just to create some definition between the tertials and the primaries. And I'm not carving individual tertials, I'm just going to carve this whole group and then come back with paint and put a little separation between the tertial feathers. Now I'm carving down the other set of primaries there into the side pocket, and then lowering those a little bit so the tertials are overlapping the primaries there. There's a better view of it. And then flattening these primaries out. Now I want to work on the side of the tail curl here, and I'm going to use the end of the burr and push it in and start removing material on the side. I want to open up enough down here in the covert area that we can see that there is a tail curl there, but not try to work too hard to make it perfect. So I'm just removing the material from the coverts there under the primaries and down to the top of the tail feathers. And flip that around. Now you can get a little better view of what I'm doing here. So starting to open up that tail curl area just so that it's a little bit more defined. Now we'll go to the other side, do a similar thing, again using the end of the burr to remove material and leave that tail curl material a little more defined than it was before. I'm taking the coverts down, using the end of the burr again to remove material between the primaries and the tail feathers. And cleaning up that the lower edge of the primaries there. So from this view you can see a little bit of the structure that's starting to form here. The wingtips tucked together over the tail curl, putting more definition in the top of the tail feathers here. Getting rid of the bandsaw lines. And I want just a little bit of a shadow cast there in that area you can see, and now you can start to see the tail curl showing up there. I'm going to put a little bit of a depression in the center of that tail feather. I'm not going to drill all the way through. I just want to create a little concaved area there to convey the structure of that tail curl group of feathers and the split down the center of that group too. I think I'm going to remove a little thickness from the tail. It looks a little big and bulky, and I think I can remove a little material here and still keep the tail nice and strong. So I'm going to go back to my cylindrical 3/4 inch burr and just remove that material from the underside of the tail. And then use this to kind of clean up the tail feathers under here as they meet the rump. Same thing on this side, just thinning up the tail a bit. I think it's going to look better so that there's not just a big, huge block back there as the bird projects from a distance. And we can do some things when we're painting that tail to make it look nice and thin. We'll go through that later. Just about finished thinning up that tail. It's probably 3/8 inch thick or a 1/2 inch at this point, and I'll do some refinement to that. Now I want to work on the tail curl a little bit more, change bits here. And I want to open up this area. I've got a little ruby bit with a ball end on it, and I'm just going to drill a little bit of depression here to just indicate that that tail curl is there without drilling all the way through. I don't want to make this area too fragile, but I want to put enough here that I cast a little bit of a shadow and the tail curl shows up a little bit more than it does if I just left it with no carved out area. I'm going to use the end of this ruby bit, and I apologize, I'm off screen here a bit, but I'm just using this ruby bit to start to clean things up. Now that gives you a better view of, that's about all I want to do there in terms of the tail curl. I'm going to change to a little bit smaller cylindrical ruby bit here and use that to put a groove in the tail curl feather group here. So I work the one side and then I'm just angling those out. Don't want to make this too thin, but give it enough shape that it kind of conveys the shape of those curls that are so prevalent on a Drake Mallard. There, that's a better look at it there. Now I'm going to go with the kind of a bullet nose ruby bit and use the side of that to do some pre-sanding and clean up all of these areas that are kind of tight in here. I can't get my sanding drum in all of these areas, so I use a ruby bit like this to just clean things up. You can see I'm rounding the edges of the tail there because I don't want, again, any sharp edges that are going to take a hit and be dented in right away. A little bit of a round edge is stronger, in my opinion. So I'm going to go over the entire bird with this ruby bit and just clean things up and get it ready for sanding and hit all the spots that I can't get like tight up against the tail here with the sanding drum. So I won't show all of that because it's a lot of repeat, but just know that I'm going to work this for a while like this. All right, finished with that ruby bit and got things shaped up, and now I can shift to my sanding drum, 1/2-inch sanding drum with 150 grit, and I'll just use this to go over the entire bird, give it a good sanding, and do some final shaping as I'm smoothing things out, getting rid of the ink lines there, shaping up the back of the neck. So I'll just show a little portion of this just so you can get a feel for what I'm doing with the sanding drum. And with the edge of that drum, I can get into some pretty tight spots and clean up the primaries here and the separation between the tertials and the primaries. Make sure everything is smooth. Okay, that's probably enough sanding to watch for now. Just jumping ahead a little bit here, that gives you a better look at the structure back there. I've still got some cleanup to do on the primaries here, and I'm going to come back with a smaller bit and do a little bit of cleanup on that tail curl just to smooth things out. I can get the sides of it with the sanding drum here, but I want to put a little bit more shape to it, and I'll do that with a smaller bit later. Okay, further along, just about done. I'll complete the sanding and then come back, but that gives you a view of the back end there. Just to help toughen and strengthen this tail and this carving detail, I thinned down a little 2-part DevCon 5-minute epoxy with acetone. And I'm just going to paint that over this entire section, let that soak into the cork just to give it some more strength and toughness back there. Obviously use an old paintbrush because it'll probably ruin the paintbrush. But just on the tail section, since this is cork and not a hardwood insert, and this will see some field use, I just wanted to have some additional toughness back there. So I'll do that with several coats until that epoxy is really embedded in the cork in that area. It's just another quick view of that area, and I'll let that epoxy set. And in the meantime, I can move on to mounting the head. All right, now I want to get the head mounted. I'm mixing up some 5-minute DevCon epoxy. You have to work pretty fast. This dries in 5 minutes, like it says. Nothing like a video watching glue dry. I know, pretty exciting. Okay, I'm going to rock that down and then maintain pressure on there. I'll get some paper towel and wipe off the excess so I don't have to grind that off later. There we go. We'll let that set, and then I'll be back. Once the epoxy has set, then I'm going to use a little cone-shaped burr here and just run around the joint between the head and the cork body. There's a little bit of a mismatch here in front, so I'm going to take off a little bit of wood and match that up with the cork body below. And I'll do that all the way around and remove any residual epoxy so that we have a nice clean joint between the cork and the wood. And I do this with a burr initially because the epoxy can quickly junk up a ruby bit. So with a little more tooth on the bit, it doesn't load up with the epoxy like a ruby bit does. So I'm going to take my time and go around. You just have to be careful I don't dig in too deep on the cork because the differences in the hardness of the wood and cork, it's easy to hit it too hard there. All right, I've gone all the way around. I had a little mismatch in the back as well, so I took care of that. Now I'm going to use my sanding drum and just smooth that neck joint out. And take out the burr lines that I've put in with the grinding bit. Not a very good picture here, but just know I'm working my way around that neck joint. And then I'll finish up with some hand sandpaper, a Swiss sandpaper roll that fits nicely in that neck area, and go around and hand sand everything to finish it up. One thing I like to do is take a look at the decoy, see if there are any deep voids in the cork. Like right there is a pretty deep hole, a couple of them here on the breast. And rather than just try to seal those with the sealer, I'm taking a little bit of plastic wood with some acetone and just smearing it into those voids so that I can close those up. They don't become places where water is going to seep into the body of the bird if it penetrates the paint. So not the entire decoy, just looking for spots. There's one right there. It doesn't take much to fill a void. While I have the plastic wood and acetone, I just applied a very thin coat of the plastic wood directly over the seam and just in the areas where I could see the seam, and smooth that out with acetone. I'll let that dry, and that'll help disguise the neck seam between the cork and the wood. One more task before I stop for the night and let these things cure. I like to seal the inside of my screw holes with DevCon epoxy so that if water does get in there, it doesn't soak into the wood. I'm just rolling that paintbrush around inside there. Same thing with the anchor line hole. That oak is pretty porous on the end grain, so I'm going to seal that up. And I'll do the same thing on the end grain just to get a good seal on that. That'll help the final sealer keep water out of the keel. Okay, I think that's a good place to stop this session. I'm going to let these things cure overnight. And in the final session on carving, next time, we'll get the decoy sanded, sealed up, get the keel sealed up, check flotation, weight the keel, get the decoy ready to paint, basically. Until then, Tom Christie signing out. Have fun out there. See you next time.